atherosclerosis, the biggest killer of Americans, it's a pediatric disease. Starts from childhood. Every cheeseburger, every milkshake. People don't have to suffer these diseases. We didn't a couple hundred years ago. We created these with our lifestyle. Well, we can walk out from under this cloud of disease and early death with the diet that we humans were meant to run on, and it's a plant-predominant diet.
Current healthcare system isn't about health, wellness, and longevity. It's crisis intervention and revenue generation. Lee and I came together with this passion for better nutrition, proper exercise, the importance of sleep, and community engagement.
Wow, did you just hear what Dr. Michael Klaper said? Atherosclerosis is now a pediatric disease. As a diagnostic radiologist, I couldn't agree more. We're now seeing adult diseases like fatty liver disease in children due to the atrocious standard American diet. Welcome to the Kurisko and Company podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lee Kurisko. We are thrilled and honored to have Dr. Michael Klaper as our guest today. Dr. Klaper is an icon in the plant-based world, having used whole food plant-based nutrition as a therapeutic modality for decades. He used to work at the world-famous True North Health Center, where they use medically supervised water fasting and whole food plant-based nutrition to arrest and reverse chronic disease with incredible results. He's also a recipient of the Courage of Conscience Award for his passion and clarity as a vegan physician and surgeon. I really enjoyed my conversation with Dr. Klaper, and I think you will too.
Welcome, Dr. Klaper. We are so glad to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, Lee, for that lovely introduction and for the invitation to be with you and your viewers. Thanks so much.
Yeah, well, we feel very honored because, like I say, you're an icon in the plant-based world. And I remember listening to you several years ago on YouTube as I was just sort of getting my toe stuck in the water on plant-based nutrition. I was very impressed. And I mean, there's really very little denying what you say about plant-based nutrition in terms of health, the environment, and, you know, animal welfare and so on. So there's no arguing with it. In fact, I listened online just the other day. I listened to your talk about what I wish I had learned as a medical student just the other day. And it was very compelling. I don't know how anybody could sort of refute what you're saying. But for starters, tell me, like, how did you get into plant-based nutrition?
Well, the message was delivered to me, if you will, through two channels of my awareness. My left brain, the intellectual side, received the message when I was a resident in anesthesiology at Vancouver General, and I found myself on the cardiovascular anesthesia service. And day after day, I'm putting people to sleep and watching surgeons open their chest and open the arteries in their heart and pulling this yellow, greasy guck out of their artery walls called atherosclerosis that was causing their angina and their strokes, etc. And back then, this was 1981, there were already studies in the book showing this is largely the fat of the animals these people are eating, plus a plant-based diet can actually melt these plaques away, can actually reverse the disease. The study in 1977 made this very clear. Well, I had a great interest because my father died of clogged arteries. I know I've got those genes in me, and I was getting the message back then that unless I changed my diet, one of these bodies laying on that operating table with that striker saw going up their sternum was going to be me. And so already the message was, Michael, clean up your diet, go more plant-based. And that was the left brain intellectual channel. On the right side of the brain, if you will, the message was delivered to me at a restaurant by a friend of mine. We were out for dinner, and I had become very passionate about living a life of nonviolence, so-called ahimsa. I had seen so much violence in the trauma unit at Cook County Hospital when I was a medical student there. I just wanted to get the violence out of my own life. And so I began reading the books about the Indian saints, Mahatma Gandhi, Satchidananda, and about a life of ahimsa. And one evening out in Vancouver, I was pontificating to a friend about a life of nonviolence while polishing off a porterhouse steak at the local Keg and Cleaver restaurant. And John looked at me with great compassion. He says, "That's all very nice, Michael, but if you want to get the violence out of your life, you might want to start with that piece of meat on your plate because in satisfying your desire for the taste of flesh in your mouth, which is really what this is about, you are paying for the death of the animal and for the next one in line at the slaughterhouse. Well, as soon as he said that, all the old rationalizations jumped into my head. Well, the animal's dead already, and that's what they raised them for, and all those rationales people use. But before I could get the words out to him, that little voice on my shoulder said, you know, he's right. And I had done much of my growing up with my uncle's dairy farm in northern Wisconsin. I know the violence inherent in putting any piece of meat on the plate. I chopped the heads off chickens. I saw the old dairy cow shot in the head when they're stopped giving milk. There's inherent violence in the production of all meat products, and I knew that. Well, he called my bluff on that one. As I went up to pay for the steak dinner, I felt complicit in a crime because I love those big, large-eyed, gentle animals, those cows. I had a real connection with them, and here I was paying for their death. Well, between the two messages I was getting in the operating room about my arteries and in my heart about the fate of the animals, that was the end of my meat eating. Well, my body just loved that. Within 12 weeks, a 20-pound spare tire of fat melted off my belly. My high blood pressure went to normal. My high cholesterol went to normal. I felt great waking up in a nice lean body every day. And at that point, I realized I didn't want to be an anesthesiologist anymore and spend my career putting people to sleep. I'd rather go back to general practice and help them wake up. And so I did, much to my parents' dismay, as I left my anesthesia residency with 6 months left to go. Do you know the money you are giving up? But it was just not in truth. I saw now, I had left general practice for anesthesia out of desperation. My patients were all getting fatter and sicker and having strokes and heart attacks because I didn't know what to tell them. Well, now I knew what to tell them. It was very clear. And now I wanted to get back to general practice and make the best prescription of all for these folks. And I found people in the area who could give plant-based cooking lessons, and I sent my patients to them, and they experienced the same wonderful changes in their health and their body. And there's no going back. You can't unring the bell. Once you see it, this is how medicine should be practiced. In fact, I have a slide in my presentation to the medical students. Do you want to heal these patients, or you just want to manage their chronic disease? That's what it kind of comes down to. And so I've gone in, boots in, as they say in New Zealand, on the side of, I want to heal these patients. Well, get real about what they're eating, doctor, because that's why they're sitting in front of you, overweight, diabetic, hypertensive, clogged up and inflamed. What they're putting in their bloodstream every 4 hours. Well, change that and the whole body changes. So that's how it came around. There's no going back at this point. You can't unring the bell. And so I've been a plant-based physician, and I was thinking, somebody should tell the medical students this. Somebody should go to the med school and tell the students. And that same little voice, that troublemaking voice on my shoulder says, well, how about you, Doc? Why don't you go to the med students? And that's what I've been doing the last several years, and imparting the plant-based message that these diseases that they're spending the majority of their time treating are reversible. No one ever told me that. The hypertension is reversible, diabetes is reversible. And their plant-based diet is the key to this reversal. I wish someone had told me that. The crux of my lecture on what I wish I learned in med school about nutrition. But now we are trying to get that message out to as many med students as possible, and they're very receptive. Don't want to monopolize your interview here, but that's
No.
how it came to be talking to you today.
I'm happy to hear your comments. I actually started out in general practice before I became a radiologist, and I practiced as a family doctor for 3 years before I started my radiology residency. And one of the things that I got discouraged about as a family doctor was I was actually very interested in health, and I did it for 3 years, and I sort of got the sense I wasn't really making anybody healthy. I was just sort of putting band-aids on problems. And I was under sort of the misguided idea that was all just about low fat, but it's really about whole food, plant-based, not just low fat. And so my successes getting people truly healthy were limited. And so I had a bit of a sense of frustration, and for other reasons as well. And I really do enjoy working as a diagnostic radiologist, but that was a source of frustration for me. And now I realize that the tools are there now. you know, to really truly make people healthy, that we've got such a good understanding of it now. This has been one of the motivations to have this channel and talk to people like you. But you are we're very much on the cutting edge as a physician working at the True North Health Center, where you were doing therapeutic water fasting. I mean, way back when Dr. Goldhammer started this was almost considered quackery. But now it's very avant-garde, you know, you're on the leading edge. Tell us about your experiences working at True North Health Center with a whole food plant-based diet and water-based fasting, and the type of results you got with people.
Well, I have known Dr. Alan Goldhammer for a good 30 years. And when we were both young men, he was saying, Michael, someday you're going to come and work at True North, because he had started it back in the 80s. And I said, no, Alan, I don't know anything about fasting. He says, you'll come and you'll learn, but this is something that you should know about. Well, the time and the wheels of life go around. And in 2006, found myself, I had done 3 years of acute care medicine in New Zealand and came back and needed a place to work, and wound up on the staff at True North. What a remarkable institution. This is about an hour north of San Francisco. It's a converted apartment complex. They've got a room overnight accommodation, about 80 people. And the standard, and it was only about 45 when I first came there, but he's been steadily expanding it. And they've got several MDs on their staff, chiropractors, naturopaths, and assorted support folks. But the body is the main star of the show, the main agent of therapeutics, if you will, of people getting healthier. And as Dr. Goldhammer says, with a wink, you know, we get people healthy by doing nothing. We just put them in a room and let them drink water. Of course, there's more to it there, but because yes, they do supervised fasting, but it's done professionally. They have a staff of interns. The intern, the medical assistant knocks on the door twice a day. Hi, how are you doing? Takes your blood pressure, any nausea, lightheadedness, headache. Well, they watch the people like a hawk there. This is not done willy-nilly. This is done in a proper medical setting. And people come there with all sorts of the classic diseases, certainly obesity and overweight for sure, but it's not a weight loss, it's not a fat farm. This is to reverse chronic disease. We are focused on the high blood pressure, the type 2 diabetes, the active lupus, the psoriasis, the inflammatory and degenerative diseases inflicted on the human body by a diet that was never meant to eat, meat and dairy and oil and sugars and salt and processed foods, that toxic mix that floods through all our tissues and upsets enzyme reactions throughout all our tissues, and then these disease states manifest. But again, it's a matter of, you know, you can't put diesel fuel, kerosene, in a gasoline burning engine. The spark plugs are going to foul and the gas line is going to clog up. Well, the same thing with our bodies. We are basically plant-eating hominids, like our gorilla cousins, and we certainly weren't meant to run our body on that, again, that high-fat, high-flesh diet there. And so just changing to a whole food plant-based diet is the real magic. That's really does the key there. But there is that transition time, and no one needs to fast. If people just start eating, you know, oatmeal and fruit for breakfast, and lunches and dinners with big salads and hearty vegetable soups and steamed veggies and hearty bean and grain dishes, etc., the body will correct, you know, the vast majority of medical illnesses there. But there are some people who need a little extra help with that transition, or are in an acute medical situation. They've got uncontrolled high blood pressure, or they've got out of control diabetes. What could help them? Well, here's where this very unappreciated but very powerful modality of water-only fasting comes in. If for X number of days, and it can be as brief as 72 on a 3-day water fast is very helpful. 5 days, most people can do that at home. But at True North, we didn't hesitate. People just had recalcitrant high blood pressure or really active lupus or rheumatoid arthritis. supervise a long fast, 2, 3, 4 weeks or longer. And people might say, my God, 4 weeks with no food, they must be dropping in the hallways. No, they don't. The body has such profound compensatory, it can compensate in such a beautiful way. After 2 days, 3 days of eating no carbohydrates, the body shifts into a gear where you're running off your own fat stores. And and you enter the state of ketosis. But the ketosis is not the object. The object is freeing the body from the constant floods of sugars and oils, etc. And also by day 3, and certainly day 4 and 5 and beyond that, when there's no carbohydrate calories coming in, our preferred fuel, the body's running on stored fats. It shifts into another metabolic gear. The body gets very parsimonious, it doesn't want to waste calories on unnecessary bodily functions. So inflammation in the tissues gets dialed way down, and we see this predictably in people with the inflammatory diseases. High blood pressures come down. High blood sugars eventually come down, though they may take a while to do that. And again, inflammation throughout the body subsides. And day after day, you check on these folks and they do better and better. Say, well, how are they not eating the wallpaper by day 6 with no food? Actually, it's one of the body's gifts to the owner of the body there. By day 3 or 4 in ketosis, you're not hungry. The vast majority of folks, they not only aren't hungry, the ketones in the bloodstream quell the hunger reflex, but also with all the energy that used to go to digesting food and other and similar processes, that energy is not used in that way. So that energy is freed up and people feel it. And it was remarkable. It would stop me in the courtyard at Doc, I haven't felt this good in years. I got all this energy. I haven't eaten in 3 weeks, but I feel wonderful. And, it's counterintuitive. You think they're going to be weak and hungry and shivering on the bed. And the opposite is true. They're not hungry. They feel good. The body is just so amazing and the powers that it has in our tissues. Eventually, there comes a point where you stop the fast. Either the fast has accomplished its purpose, the blood pressure is normal, the blood sugar is normal, no, stop the fast at that point. Or the person's body just, everyone has a number, I'm going to do a 21-day fast, but that's just a number, but if on day 15, the person says, Doc, I'm done, they're done. And EA celebrate, they did 15 days on water, wonderful. And good things clearly have happened in their body. But the most important good thing, and I was tempted to get a T-shirt made up when I made rounds there, it's not the fast, it's what you eat after the fast is the real key. And if the person can use that time to then transition to a diet based on whole plant foods, as we bring them back into the world of eating on the soups and salads and steamed veggies, usually the benefits they've achieved are maintained. The blood pressure stays down, the joints stay pain-free. If they go back to their old diet, if they leave True North and they head for their favorite Italian restaurant for chicken cacciatore with extra cheese, and or they fall back in their fast food habits, it's stunning how quickly all the old maladies come back, how quickly the blood pressure goes up and the joints start hurting again. Cinderella turns back into a pumpkin within days. It doesn't take long. So the fast, as powerful as it is, it's really just a stepping stone on the way to a whole food plant-based diet. It's a helpful leapfrog. But as I said at the beginning of this discourse, that nobody really needs to fast. If they would just start with a whole food plant-based diet, by a month of that, you're about as where you would have been with a water fast. It's the food stream day after day after day that makes the difference. And to put a bow on it there, our mentor, Dr. Colin Campbell, wrote this wonderful book called Whole, W-H-O-L-E. And he makes the point there, it's the whole food stream. Don't get focused on how much vitamin K2 is in a particular vegetable and how much B6. It's the whole food stream with these thousands of phytonutrients that interact with each other in our body in millions of different combinations. Make sure it's a whole plant-based food stream, and your body will take care of the rest there. Your job is to eat whole plant foods. So that's what we tell people to do, and those who can do it maintain the wonderful changes they earn the hard way, or they earn with effort during their fasting at True North. But I was there for 8 years. I supervised several thousand fasts over 8 years, and I still get notes and letters from patients there who've had these wonderful responses. It's a very powerful modality. Of course, when we're sick, we stop eating. You know, they're out there. The animals, when they get sick, they curl up under a tree for a couple of days. It's a common practice throughout the animal kingdom, and even in humanity here. So many cultures, a long history of fasting. But as a therapeutic tool for the practitioner, it's a very powerful one. But again, it's got to be set in the context of a whole food plant-based diet. And that's where the healing really, really happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I heard a quote by Dr. David Katz talking about the importance of whole food. And he said, the active ingredient in broccoli is broccoli, which is,
Well said.
which is, you know, I mean, people think, oh, you know, get a pill of sulforaphane or, you know, DIM or whatever, just eat the broccoli. And it'll probably work better in the context of all those other phytonutrients than it would if you just take the supplement. One of the big things about fasting is that it accelerates that adaptation process of your taste buds, which I think this is one of the big challenges of getting people on whole food plant-based diet, is the food may taste somewhat bland if you're used to all that salt, oil, and sugar. Well, first, let me ask you this. What is the longest period of time that you think a person could safely fast without medical intervention?
Oh, without medical intervention?
Yeah, without medical supervision.
Yeah, we really don't want anyone to fast more than 5 days at home. And
Okay.
that's for a regular healthy person on no medications. But if you're
Okay.
on 3 medicines for blood pressure, blood sugar, you really need to talk with your doctor or be at a place where either go to True North, or now there's, I think even True North will supervise a fast for you at home. But it means every morning signing on and do a Zoom connection with one of their docs there and verify that you don't have headaches, you don't have nausea, how much water did you drink. You can supervise the fast remotely, but you've got a very low threshold. If anyone says, I'm feeling I'm going to throw up, that's the end of the fast there. You know, you have a low bar there. But if you've got medical issues, then 2-3 days at home would be as far as you'd want to fast, but you should have supervision. But if you're otherwise a healthy person and just want to clean out because your diet hasn't been healthy, start with a 3-day fast from Friday to Monday. Just drink water, or vegetable broth will work fine. A glass of vegetable broth, we'll squeeze a lemon in there if you like. And increase it up to 5 days. That's as far as anybody should go unsupervised at home.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's sort of two schools of thought, you know, making the transition to whole food plant-based diet. If someone didn't really want to do the fast, but they want to just transition by continuing to eat, do you advocate like jumping right in the water and changing everything, or do you suggest they do it incrementally?
By analogy, someone we're in discussion about what's the best exercise for a person, and we all agreed it's the one they'll actually do is the best exercise. And the same thing with the transitioning to a whole food plant-based diet, whichever gets you there. There's some people, well, let me before that state the obvious truth. The greater the degree of change, the greater the reward, the greater the response you're going to earn for yourself. The best thing to do is make a complete change. Just jump onto a whole food plant-based diet, and it's having oatmeal in the morning with fruit and sunflower seeds instead of bacon and eggs. And it's not that huge a sacrifice there. But jumping into it will give you the greatest response in your body. But the folks who, for whatever reason, taste preferences, social issues, whatever, money, they just can't, great, pick one meal, just have a plant-based breakfast every morning for a week or two, and then get daring and have a plant-based lunch, have a hummus sandwich with tomato and lettuce and an onion on it every other day. So already you've cut your meat consumption down by half with plant-based breakfast and a plant-based lunch every other day. And find one plant-based dinner. Have spaghetti with tomato with marinara sauce and vegetables instead of meatballs. It's not that huge a sacrifice. Have the bean chili instead of the beef chili. It's not huge a sacrifice. But well, wow, already you've got a breakfast and a lunch and a dinner. There's a whole plant-based day. Do that once a week. And start with that, and then when you're feeling comfortable and you enjoy those meals with them, twice a week, and yes, you can slow. So it takes a person 6 months, as long as they get there. That's the most important thing. But there are others who just want to just jump boots in, and they're going to get their reward quicker. Might be some transitioning. They may get a little gassy and a little full for a few days, and fine. This too shall pass. But within a week or two of eating that kind of food, the body's usually doing much, much better. So whatever transition plan they'll work, but again, your body's never not looking. There's no fooling it. It knows if you snuck a cheeseburger or you didn't. Who are we kidding here? And so to thine own health be true, Shakespeare said or should have said, and Dr. Klaper said it for sure. So be true to your body. Do the best you can. Eating shouldn't be an anxiety-producing event. It shouldn't be a guilt-inducing process. It's just food. Do the best you can. But again, we're whole plant eaters. Try to maintain that to the greatest extent possible, and the rewards are good health. Nothing more priceless than that.
Do you agree that the concept of food addiction is real?
No, I don't.
No.
I
Okay.
don't. Well, it gets to be a little squishy in definition, in that in my, and again, maybe this is my old classical medical school training, but I was taught the definition of addiction is the regular ingestion of a substance, then when it is no longer ingested, causes physical withdrawal symptoms. Heroin, certainly, the heroin addict goes through physical withdrawal. And sometimes the caffeine headache that's a physical symptom. That is a true addiction. If a person doesn't eat a pizza for a while, are they going to have withdrawals? And is there cheeseburger withdrawals? And I mean, we have a taste. We love the fat and salt and sugar on our tongue. We love that chewy bite into a steak. Though these are primordial taste sensations that we've had since childhood. And they're again associated with the positive memories. And Daddy always made pancakes and eggs for us on Sunday mornings. And so it gets overlaid with the comfort food, the emotional responses, and the effect is an addiction where people can't stop eating it. But is it because they're going to get physical withdrawals? Not really. But this is a distinction without a difference, probably. People they eat a lot of fast foods and they like the taste of it, and they miss it when they don't eat it, and it calls to them. I had a patient who had been an official hardcore drug user, and he says, "Doc, if you're someone with a drug habit, what if, as you drove down the street, you have the signs sticking out from the stores in your visual field there? What if you're a drug addict, heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, barbiturates, and they call to you, Well, if someone's got a real thing with fast food, look at what they're exposed to you can't drive a block. Burgers, fries, pizzas, chicken. It's constantly in our faces. Our whole society's become distorted around this. And so it's a tough thing to break out of. I don't want to minimize it. It is a bear in this society to rise above the fast food swamp. But if you don't, it sucks you down into the swamp there, and then you wind up a medical patient. And
Well, I think that one of the challenges is that bad eating is so baked into the fabric of our society now. One of the hospitals that I worked at in Minneapolis, it actually had a heart hospital, that was, 50 yards away from a McDonald's in the hospital facility. And so what hope is there to get people to correct their behavior if the hospitals are condoning, that sort of diet? It's one of my major pet peeves that this is just not acknowledged. And as a radiologist, I commonly go through, I'm looking at a CAT scan or whatever, and I need a little more clinical information. I'll go into the medical record, and I'm often shocked at how many medications people are on for, diabetes and high blood pressure and all depression and, you name it. And they may be quite a bit younger than me. And I just think it does not need to be this way. It's so unfortunate. And Joyce and I were just sort of talking about this. There's almost like this shamanic trance that people have looking at the modern healthcare system, thinking that that's where the answers are for your health, when really it's about your day-to-day habits. I mean, that's where the real power is. I've told this story in the podcast before, but when I made the transition to a plant-based diet, I dropped my cholesterol 187 points, and I dropped out of the pre-diabetic blood sugar range literally within 3 or 4 days. And, there's no medications that can do that, but I think it's problematic, because the hospitals, I know that this sounds like a real party pooper thing, but they'll celebrate retirements and promotions and that sort of thing with, ice cream socials and, pizza day and that sort of thing. Well, if they're normalizing amongst healthcare workers and healthcare workers are going out and living their lives, this will just become it is completely normalized as to how people eat. But you and I know that you can eat 100% plant-based and the food's delicious.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, Lee, I mean, what you said is, it's the crux of so many issues here. As you say, it's baked into the fabric of our society. One of the sentences I heard a doc say at a conference knocked my head back a little bit. He says, we got to start realizing that atherosclerosis, the biggest killer of Americans, it's a pediatric disease.
Right.
It starts in childhood. Every cheeseburger, every milkshake, already, these kids get killed in car accidents. You look at their aortas already at age 9 and 10, 11, they've got yellow atherosclerotic streaks forming in their aortas. Yeah, and as you said, we normalize it. They're selling McDonald's in the hospital lobby. This is a Fellini movie set of arrangement to greet the public with, and it's hard not to be a bit discouraged. The system that overlays it. There's so many good people working in the system. The doctors are dedicated, the nurses, the technicians, the people doing all the computer work. Everybody wants people to be healthy and to relieve suffering. The intention of I can't impugn that in the slightest. It's a good-hearted endeavor. The whole healthcare industry and organization, but laid on top of that, I don't want to be this, money is the root of all evil, but the financial system that holds that in place, the insurance compensation, all this stuff, everybody's making money off of every procedure, every aspirin that gets opened, every catheter that gets inserted. Some insurance companies making money off of that. And why should they want to change that? And that it's, pretty kind of baking in, disease. And of course, the cynic would say, well, yes, there's that keeps the profit juggernaut going there, and it hurts me to the quick to hear that the doctor's always doing those procedures just to make money. No doctor is, darn few at least, does anything to make money. But there are people above the doctor who certainly are making a lot of money off this disease care. It's not a healthcare system; it's a disease care, and we create these diseases and then we care for them. But it just winds up perpetuating most. One reason I left anesthesia and went back to general practice is we had a patient came in, big, overweight, heavyset guy. We did a 4-vessel bypass and ventricular aneurysm repair, a 9-hour procedure. He had a terrible post-op course, got a post-op pneumonia through a blood clot. He got a wound to his sense, a wound opened up there. His diabetes went out of control. He spent a month in the ICU, 3 months on the cardiac rehab ward. And as soon as he left out, he said, I'm buying McDonald's for everybody. And he took his whole family out to the fast food restaurant to start clogging up his graft again. And I'm thinking, this is a Fellini movie. This is bizarre. And nobody sat down with that man. The missing link, somebody, the doctor, the dietitian, the case man, somebody should have sat down and met with this man. Before you leave, Mr. Johnson, I want to talk about why these arteries clogged up in the first place, what's going to happen if you don't change your diet, and here's how you can prevent those nice new grafts from clogging up again. I wish someone had told him that. And that's what we're trying to instill in the heads of the medical students with our Moving Medicine Forward initiative, that nobody should leave the hospital without some plant-based person, dietitian preferably, sitting down with them and talking to them about what they can do so they don't have to come back to the hospital and repeat their travail there. So we got a lot of work ahead of us. The situation's got distorted due to money and human nature, but there's no excuse. We still got to turn this ocean liner around and get it headed back to the true north there, of course.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think, a part of the problem is, there's money in bypasses, but there's really no money in taking the time to instruct people. The hospitals tend to not be that interested in doing so. And I think it takes the efforts of people like you and me to sort of do an end run around the mainstream healthcare system and just, talk to people and use the power of the internet and try to educate people. And, hopefully we can make an impact. I'm sure we're making an impact. I mean,
Yes.
It's because of the internet that I even heard about this thing. I mean, I'd been a doctor for decades before I heard about this whole food plant-based concept. I had thought it was a bit kooky because, how do you get enough protein? Where do you get your vitamin B12 and those sorts of arguments? But unfortunately, it is kind of a reimbursement thing. And like I say, we look at the healthcare system in a somewhat shamanic way. Like we recently put out a video about mammography. Well, Joyce did. And I have a bit of an iconoclastic view on mammography as a radiologist, which is that I believe there should be informed consent because there's definitely downsides to mammography, false positives, false negatives. The impact, unfortunately, on breast cancer deaths is really quite limited. So the thrust of the thing is there should be informed consent. But if you look at what really works, like if you look at mammography, optimistically, you screen 1,000 women every year for 10 years. Optimistically, you will save one life. And, you sort of have to torture the statistics. And there's a counter argument that because some unnecessary surgeries will occur for very indolent cancers, radiotherapy, maybe chemotherapy, you might actually be causing some deaths, believe it or not. And so, we believe it's something that there should be informed consent. Now, if you look at what really does work, I mean, from these large epidemiological studies that if you replace 3% of animal protein in the diet with plant protein, overall all-cause mortality goes down like 10%. If you're replacing 3% of calories from eggs, it goes down 20%. We know these things work. They don't cost any money, but, people don't necessarily get that message unless we make the special effort. There's this big movement now, I'm sure you're aware of it, the low carb thing, and the latest iteration being the carnivore thing. In your lecture about what you wish you learned in med school, tell us about some of these mechanisms by which meat undermines our health.
Oh my. And again, we are an unusual primate species. No other species feeds its young animal flesh 3 times a day. But we humans, from age 6 months, the baby is still nursing at the breast. And at age 6 months, with all the love in the parents' hearts, that jar of baby lamb and baby chicken and baby turkey is opened up. And from that point on, 3 times a day, animal flesh gets slathered on that child's intestine, all through infancy and toddler years and childhood. By age 4 or 5, they're eating their Happy Meals in the fast food restaurant. They're eating meat 3 times a day through their adolescence, through their teen years, through their 20s or 30s. You eat animal flesh 3 times a day for 30 years. And it's going to have an effect on your body. We are not carnivorous apes. We are not even house cats who are set up to eat animal flesh daily. We are not. And as a result, with every flesh-based meal, what I call a red tide of toxic molecules sweeps through the bloodstream, just going down the rogues gallery. First of all, there's oxidized cholesterol. Nobody eats raw meat, and the very act of putting the steak under the broiler, grilling the burger, frying the chicken oxidizes the cholesterol in the animal's muscle. So we eat that with the burger or the chicken, and a flood of oxidized cholesterol particles floods through our tissues. These are the particles that work their way into the wall of the artery to set off plaque formation. It's the oxidized cholesterol that sets off atherosclerosis. Every time you broil that steak, you are oxidizing the nucleic acids and the glycogen in the animal muscle. That's going to produce what are called mutagenic aldehydes. These are molecules that damage your genes, and the genes that call forth the enzymes in your system, though those genes get damaged. So mutagenic aldehydes. Every time you broil the steak or grill the burger, you're going to create carcinogenic cancer-causing hydrocarbons that smear on the stomach wall. You get gastric cancer. Smear on the colon wall, you get colon cancers. The animals in the feedlot are fed grains that are sprayed with herbicides and pesticides and antibiotics. They are drinking water with mercury and cadmium and lead. All these toxins accumulate in the animal's muscle. When you bite into that burger or into the chicken, there's a substance called Nu-5GC. Only animals make it, but it sets off inflammation throughout the body, and our paleo friends are giving themselves a shot of Nu-5GC 3 times a day. Endotoxin comes from the slaughterhouse bacteria that coat every steak and chop and chicken breast that leaves the meatpacking plant. As these bacteria die, their cell walls break up and release the stuff called endotoxin that makes your gut leaky and makes joints inflamed. And again, our paleo friends are giving themselves a shot of endotoxin 3 times a day. There's 12 or 15 substances that are really anti-health, to say the least. And people eat meat 3 times a day: the bacon and eggs for breakfast, and the cheeseburger for lunch, and chicken for dinner. We've adopted a flesh-based diet. So every 4 hours, this red tide of the meat-related marauder molecules flood through our tissues. Well, as I said, you do that 3 times a day for 30 years, 40 years, you can't be shocked when little cancer sprouts out in the prostate or the breast tissue. The arteries begin to clog up, the joints begin to hurt, the skin begins to erupt. And again, if you're putting diesel fuel in your gasoline burning engine, and now the engine's running rough and there's black smoke coming out of the exhaust, you can't say, my car's developed a disease. What's happened? What's happening? Putting the wrong fuel in it, and it's predictable it's going to happen. And that's what these diseases are, by and large. There are congenital issues, etc. But to say we don't know the cause of these diseases, especially when we see them reverse right before our eyes, both the doctor and the patients. I mean, how many patients do I have who I could hit a button? I used to have diabetes. I used to have high blood pressure. I used to have lupus. I used to have psoriasis. These diseases go away with a proper plant-based food stream. So this is the greatest, I don't want to say secret in medicine. It should be blared from TV commercial screens and highway billboards and taught in elementary school that people don't have to suffer these diseases. We didn't a couple hundred years ago. We created these with our lifestyle. Well, we can walk out from under this cloud of disease and early death with the diet that we humans were meant to run on, and it's a plant-predominant diet. If one has a little meat once a month, is it? No, lightning won't come down from the sky and strike you dead. That's why we say plant predominant. You don't have to be 100% pure vegan. It'd be nice. It'd be a lot less animals suffering in that way. But just, the majority of food material that goes down your gullet should have grown out of the ground and been minimally processed, preferably still in a form that you could call it by name. Oh, there's a tomato there, the cucumber
Right.
there. That's the food we ought to be eating. And if you do that, the body takes care of itself. Most of these conditions go away. That's what we're trying to get into the young doctors' heads. Those powerful.
There was a line in your talk to the med students that I thought was very apropos. You said you will see a small number of diseases affecting a large number of people. And that is just so true. I mean, you go through med school and you learn all about these esoteric diseases, many of which you'll never see in your whole career.
Exactly. But you open up the door of the waiting room in the radiology department or the emergency department or the outpatient, who's sitting there, Mr. and Mrs. America, overweight, diabetic, hypertensive, clogged up and inflamed. They've got these common characteristics because they're all eating the same meat and fast food based diet, and it creates the same diseases. And you'll see it in Central Africa. There you're dealing with poverty and parasites. But even that tells you that it's the food that we're eating here, it's so the lights are flashing for us. For a smart animal, it's amazing how, well, we don't want to see that. I mean, I have to give up my burger. No, there's other things to put in that bun besides a ground up dairy cow.
Oh, for sure. I mean, we do a plant-based burger. I mean, it's just, delicious.
Lovely. Absolutely.
Scratch.
Yeah.
But just this morning, I was riding the exercise bike and I watched a video with Dr. Milton Mills. I'm sure you're familiar with him.
Yes.
He goes through the comparative anatomy and physiology of carnivores and herbivores. And it's about an hour and 20 minutes. And he just totally nails the case that we are not carnivores. We're just not. I find it disturbing because I'll check out these websites and whatnot of this carnivore movement, which seems to be gaining momentum. And, some of these people, they comment, they're quite adamant that they have noticed health improvements when they go on a carnivore diet. They're adamant that they're feeling better. Why does that happen? I have a personal theory. I'm curious to see what you think about that.
Well, I think a lot of it happens, a lot of the improvement happens because of what they're not doing. The paleo folks say some things I agree with. They say, no caveman ever milked a dairy cow, so they're down on dairy products. No caveman ever ground wheat into flours and to make vegan donuts, so they're down on flour products and baked goods. They say no caveman ever squeezed the fat out of olives and poured it on a cell. They're down on oils. Well, you stop the dairy and the flour products and the oils, take those out of your diet, man, people are going to lose weight. They're going to trim down. And the weight loss itself is going to make a lot of things better. Your cholesterol is going to get better. Your glucose tolerance is going to get better. So I think a lot of it just has to do with what that diet eliminates there. But they're going to find out. My heart goes out to I'm in fear for these folks because again, it's a violation of natural law, like putting diesel fuel into a gasoline burning engine. The natural law is gasoline burning engines burn gasoline. That's the law there. Well, we are plant-eating hominids here. There is no gorilla. You don't see a bunch of gorillas go chasing down a wildebeest and eating its flesh. We are not flesh-eating hominids there. But these folks are eating like the cheetah, like the mountain lion. Well, you pack that intestine full of meat 3 times a day. Yeah, and a lot of these folks are young and they feel like you can get away with it. But you and I both know, sir, that packing the human intestine full of decaying animal flesh 3 times a day, year after year, this is a recipe for colon cancer because as these carcinogens smear on the gut wall, you're going to get colon cancer. This is with all the endotoxin that these people are eating in the meat, they're going to get leaky gut. That's going to open the door to lupus and autoimmune diseases. This is a high-fat diet. These folks are insulin resistant, and they're walking around with latent type 2 diabetes. In order to cook animal muscle, That flame oxidizes the cholesterol and the fats into what are called advanced glycation end products, AGEs. And these damage the arteries in the brain. And if you look at the cerebral arteries of people who died of Alzheimer's, you can see how thickened and edematous and full of AGEs the brain arteries are. So I think this diet is setting these folks up for an epidemic of dementia, of autoimmune disease, of colon cancer, heart attacks, and strokes from all the TMAO that they're generating in their gut. This is a recipe for death and diet of death. And when in 5 years, I probably won't even take that long, but the article starts showing up in the journal, paleo diet associated with increased colon cancer risk, carnivore diet increased risk of stroke. My left eyebrow won't go up this much. Yep, that's right. That's what we expected, and they're going to have to learn that one the hard way. So they love that taste of steak in their mouth, and it makes them feel like a rough, tough caveman. But and again, some of their numbers are going to get better. But if they think that this is a sustainable diet for long-term human health, they're sadly mistaken. And as you're probably aware, this is a diet that would destroy the planet. They are talking about a flesh-based diet 3 times a day for 8 billion people. What are they talking about? This will destroy what few trees we have left on this planet. Trying to be politically proper here, but this is a rich man's elitist diet. Go tell the people in Central South America or Central Africa, eat flesh 3 times a day and don't eat any animal products, any plant products. It's an absurd, but they're playing. It's the diet du jour. You know, we've seen so many diets go by, so many diseases go by, candida and hypoglycemia and the Hollywood diet and the South Beach diet, and here's the carnivore diet. It'll have its day. But then when the constipation and the diverticulitis and the colitis and the strokes and the diabetes, when that shows up, you'll get the big, oops, oh, we didn't realize, oh, it might increase the risk of stroke. Yes, it will.
Yeah.
We're slow learners. Yeah, go ahead. Like Tom McDougall said, people love to hear good news about bad habits. Go ahead.
Well, my theory was basically the same as yours, which is that, eat a carnivore diet. It's really sort of the ultimate elimination diet.
It is.
Where you go and you just eat one thing, and dozens and dozens of other things that you may have been eating may have been causing your problems, and you eliminate those things. That by no means proves that a meat-based diet is a optimal diet. And one of the advocates of the meat-based diet, I've checked out some of his videos and whatnot. He's a very staunch that this is the right way to go. He was on, I think it was Joe Rogan, and he went through some of his lab work, and it was atrocious. I mean, he was pre-diabetic, his testosterone was low, his cholesterol was high, and he had some very bizarre ways of explaining it away, like it didn't matter. But, he may feel great in the short term, but in the long term, it's going to catch up with him. I mean, we are meant to eat those things, and this idea of not eating any fiber is just kind of absurd. You need that fiber. It's not just about cleaning out your colon. It's about the symbiotic relationship with the bacteria that you have and the creation of the short chain fatty acids in your colon, which then get into your bloodstream, and they work on your liver to improve your glucose tolerance, and the decreased cholesterol production. They even go to your brain and thought to have be protective against Alzheimer's disease, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's a very short sort of a philosophy of short-term gain for long-term pain. People are concerned about protein. A couple of years ago, I did a rough protein count, and I work out a lot and I eat a lot without even really trying. I was actually getting about 120 grams a day, which is a plenty. I don't even think I fully counted everything. But in the last 6 months or so, I've sort of tweaked my workout program, doing sort of a bit of heavier weightlifting. And I've actually gained about 8 pounds in the last 5 or 6 months. And it's clear that the majority of it is actually muscle. I used to be very, very muscular when I was young, so I'm reestablishing that. Well, that could not have happened if I wasn't getting adequate amino acids. And, almost every day we have a big bowl of oats, so we're getting whole grains, which have protein. Pretty much every day we're eating some form of legumes, which give complementary amino acids. Without even thinking about it, there's enough substrate there to build the muscle. What are your thoughts?
Well, you're singing the song beautifully. When it comes to a plant-based diet, what has protein? Everything has
Yeah,
protein.
yeah.
Nature can't design anything from a kernel of corn to a banana without using all 8 amino acids, or all there,
Yeah.
the ones. And it was pointed out years ago, when the time in our lives when we are growing the fastest, during our first year of life, when we're a growing infant, mother's milk has about 5% protein in it. That's the highest protein mixture we will ever consume. 5% of calories coming as protein. Well, the peas are 12-14% protein. Corn is then 11% protein. Even fruits are 6-7% protein. All plant foods have protein. And basically, reiterating what you said, if you are eating sufficient calories, if you're eating 2,000 calories, say, of whole plant foods, and that's the key thing, real live beans and greens and fruits and veggies, if you're eating 2,000 calories, you can't help but get 80-90 grams of high grade protein. It's in the foods, in the grains and the beans and the nuts and the seeds and the greens, so it's in there. And this whole thing, I mean, is absurd. I mean, the biggest, most powerful animals on the planet, elephants and buffaloes and giraffes and gorillas, grow to thousands of pounds of mammalian muscles, and they never eat cheeseburgers and pepperoni pizzas. They do it all on plant protein. The amino acids are in the plants. And I've never had a gorilla in the office saying, "Doc, I can't keep my hands off those burgers. I feel protein deficient." They're eating leaves and fruit and vegetation all day, and they grow these great gorilla bodies. So
Yeah.
the whole protein things, it's another distortion that plays on our fears and reinforces old stereotypes. But the truth is, if you look at this wonderful movie, The Game Changers, and you see all these magnificent vegan athletes who do all these amazing feats of strength and speed and endurance on plant-based foods, like any gazelle can do. It's a problem it's a solution without a problem. Eat your whole foods, and you'll plenty of them, and you'll get all the protein you need.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I give an example in my talk of like you just did, of a gorilla, 400-pound gorilla eating nothing but leaves and fruit and the odd termites. And yet they're at least 95% genetically similar to human beings. And we have this obsession with protein, thinking that we need to take a supplement when you have a developing baby growing and developing at it faster than any time in life, with 5% of calories from protein. One area I'd like to cover with you, because I know that you're quite a passionate advocate. Tell us about the environmental impact about eating meat, and why is this a legitimate concern or a good reason in itself to not eat meat?
Oh my. I did much of my growing up in the forests of Wisconsin, and I'm a passionate environmentalist, and my heart grieves, it breaks for what we are doing to this planet. There used to be, even just about 500-600 years ago, there used to be, as we were given this planet, 6 trillion trees on planet Earth. Well, in the last 500 years, us two-legged Homo sapien folks, we've cut down half of those trees. We've cut down 3 trillion trees. These are the trees that stabilize the soil and bring the rains and put oxygen into the air. Cut them down. Why have we cut them down? Basically, because of our desire for animal flesh. We've used that land that used to be forest to either graze cattle, let them wander all over in the forest, don't come back if there's animals grazing there. They eat the young saplings. Or they're turned into vast fields of feed corn and soybeans. And I hear you've moved to Iowa lately, and you look at these vast expanses of corn there. That's not going into tortillas. That's feed grains that's going to get shoveled down the gullets of hundreds of millions of cows and pigs and chickens to make cheap cheeseburgers and bacon and pork chops there. The same thing, you drive through Illinois, where I grew up, did much of my growing up, and you can see vast fields of soybeans. That's not going into tofu and tempeh. That's animal fodder. It's the corn and beans that get shoveled into all these animals to create government subsidized cheap cheeseburgers. And it's government subsidized. So the grain costs almost nothing, and our tax dollars are paying for this. And as a result, the land that used to be forest is kept from those trees coming back because we're constantly using them basically to grow government subsidized animal flesh, which is not only killing us, but again, keeps the forest coming back. But the water that's running critically short, the vast majority of water pulled out of the Colorado River grows to grow alfalfa in the desert to feed cattle. What a hellacious waste. Every rainstorm, the soils of Illinois and Iowa and Minnesota flow into the river. They erode into the rivers. The Mississippi River is thick with the soils off the Midwest farm fields, growing animal flesh. We are trading our precious soils and the futures that they produce. Pick an environmental disaster, soil erosion, water pollution, water consumption, greenhouse gas, all of them have at their root our voracious appetite for animal flesh and the huge agribusiness industry that has sprung up, cleaved off the forest in order to create this never-ending supply of animal flesh. Well, it's a deal with the devil. And as a result, all those trees are now missed. And they're not taking carbon dioxide out of the air and turning it into solid wood. They're not renewing the rains and the rivers, and drought is descending upon the land. And the word that must not be spoken, it's from the flesh that we're eating, which, that again, that should be on highway billboards and TV commercials. Stop eating animal flesh and the earth will heal. Yeah, our future depends on it. It sounds very dramatic, but it is very dramatic. And we're stealing the future from our kids. Every time I see a mom pushing a little baby in a stroller, I feel like running up to that baby and kneeling down and apologizing to them for what we've done to their future. For what? So you can buy a cheap cheeseburger for $2. If that burger really costs what it really requires to produce it, if that meat producer had to pay for the water they use, which they don't, repair the soil erosion, do the greenhouse gas remediation, clean up the manure and the feed lots also, that burger would cost $90. It costs $120, as it should. But we're walking around in this illusion that a double cheeseburger costs $2, and we're trading our ecological futures. All we have to do, if we stop the animal flesh consumption, 2/3 of the forest would just replant themselves. They would draw carbon dioxide out of the air. They would make carbon dioxide into solid wood, and it would reverse global warming. It would save all our futures. And that's the message that we have to get out. I really urge your viewers, if you have not encountered a little book called Food is Climate by Glenn Mercer, M-E-R-Z-E-R. His section is only 60 pages. You can read it in about 2 hours. He lays out the complete story of our meat addiction, our meat consumption to the environmental disaster we're facing. So read Food is Climate, educate yourself on this most important issue. And these carnivore pushers, everybody ought to be eating flesh 3 times a day. They know not what they are saying when it comes to our ecological future. It's a deal with the darkest forces here. I hope common sense eventually prevails here.
Yeah, it's interesting living where we're living now. There's plans afoot to have these carbon sequestration plants and these pipelines and send the carbon into the ground. And, it's they need, to use farmland and stuff. And so people are pushing back because they don't want their farmland used for that. And apparently there's some danger to it. But I think that probably the greatest carbon sequestration device is a tree.
It's trees. Mother Nature came up with the best one ever.
Right. And so if we didn't consume all of this meat, we wouldn't have to come up with these cockamamie plans. And when the problem would be dealt with. The inputs, you need to have roughly 10 units of input to get 1 unit of output. When you're putting an animal as the middle person or whatever, from grain or legumes or whatever to create a meat, 10 units of input for 1 unit of output, it's really kind of crazy. there's this idea out there that actually animal agriculture is good for the environment, which I think is complete nonsense. I listened to an interview with a fella, I believe it's George Montbiot or something. I'll put his correct name up on the screen, but he's an environmental scientist, and he was saying that if we were to have everybody eat grass-fed meat rather than conventionally fed meat in the United States, you would have to basically take down every house, cut down every tree, drain every swamp, every lake, just to have grassland to feed these animals. And the lower 48 states would still be not enough to feed everybody. I mean, it's just a crazy situation. And it's almost sort of self-centered on our part to feed all this animal feed to animals, because just in the United States, what we feed to animals, we could feed every single starving person in the world, and then some. It's just really quite, perverse and unfortunate. And I think what we can do is do what you do and what I do, and hopefully we can move the needle a little bit.
Yeah, as for your viewers, what he's saying is that when you shovel all this corn and soybeans into a cow, most of it comes out the back end as manure. The parts of the energy that the animal does absorb gets turned into hooves and hair and bone and blood and hide and things that people don't eat. The actual amount, and a lot of it is expelled as heat just walking around. The actual amount of that corn and beans that turns into actual steak on your plate is, as he's saying, maybe 1/10 that. You could feed 10 people if you fed them the corn and beans directly, human style.
Right.
You can feed the world, and it's a tragedy on so many levels. It
is. Well, we've been talking for over an hour, and I want to be respectful of your time. We really appreciate it. I believe our listeners will learn a lot from you and be inspired to move towards a plant-based diet, and maybe even stick their toe in the water with some fasting.
Thank you. If your viewers have ever wondered, why doesn't my doctor know anything about nutrition? We're trying to remedy that. I'm going to the medical schools and telling the med students these are reversible diseases, and a plant-based diet is the key to that reversal. And if you want to help me get that message out to more and more med students and more young doctors, go to our website, movingmedicineforward.com. Go to movingmedforward.com. That's our movement. That's our website, movingmedicineforward.com. And learn about what we're doing. If you'd like to help, we'd really appreciate it. But that's how we're going to change medicine from the bottom up, one young doctor at a time. But we'll get there. And
we'll put a link in the show notes.
Great, thank you.
Sure. But thanks again, and perhaps we can do it some other time.
I'd love to, Lee. It's been a delight. What a fine conversationalist and a real earnest physician you are on the highest level. I think we've helped a lot of people, and if we can get them to eat healthier, we'll be happier physicians for it, no doubt. So thank you.
Well, thanks again.